Hello and welcome. This is Betsy Walker, and I'm here from the show Broken to Healthy. This is where leading experts are going to share how to heal your body naturally and reclaim your energy and vitality to live your best life. And today I'm so excited to bring to you Elizabeth Yarnell, who is a board certified naturopath. And she runs a nationwide clinic targeting inflammation through customized dietary therapies and other non-pharmaceutical protocols. So we like that. And so she's a multi-passionate entrepreneur with a goal of designing innovative products and services to help people live better lives. And that's what this show is all about. So I'm just so pleased and grateful that you could come and share with our audience today, Elizabeth. And I know that your focus has been on MS and autoimmune disease. And that's something that affects a great number of people out there. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but we're going to also talk about how just people even without autoimmune disease can stay healthy as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know you were diagnosed with MS, and so you have a story to share with us that I think will help people relate to what you've been through and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes. Well, Betsy, I'm so excited to be a part of this event. So thank you for inviting me. And my story began when I was 2 weeks before my 30th birthday, and I went to sleep as usual, and I awoke the next morning blind in my right eye. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I learned at that point that 80% of MS patients experience significant disabilities within 10 years of diagnosis. So here I was just about to turn 30, and I was learning that by the time I turned 40, I'd probably be in a wheelchair. So that really was where this whole phase of my life, this whole journey in my life started, because my MS doctors really didn't have a lot of hope, and they just said, you can take one of these injectable pharmaceuticals. They're super toxic. They have lots of side effects, and they maybe will reduce the rate of flares that you have, but at the end, you're still going to be at the bottom of this downhill slope, just like everybody else with MS. And I thought, well, that's not fair. And I can't just go home and sit around on the couch and wait for my body to give out on me. So it was my then fiance, who's now my husband of 21 years, who suggested that maybe my diet might have something to do with it. And I had to admit he might have had a point, because really I was living off of Crystal Light, Diet Coke, and gummy bears for pretty much the whole decade of my 20s. So I thought, okay, maybe diet does have something to do. And the more I was learning about how the body works, the more I was realizing that there's this whole balance of vitamins and minerals and nutrients and all sorts of other things that go into helping a healthy body function well. And I thought, okay, this might be a point, but I didn't know how to cook. So I started watching the Food Network and going to cooking classes. But every time I was really starting to develop some cooking chops, because I was really trying to follow a whole foods-based diet based on my research, it was just taking forever. And I'd end up with this kitchen full of dirty dishes and a tremendous amount of cleanup, and fatigue is a hallmark of MS. So that really wasn't working well for me. And then one night, my husband and I were watching a late night infomercial. This was in the days before we had cable, when there were like 4 channels. And the guy says, look, we can make your whole meal in this one countertop appliance. And he puts in dry rice, and then a can of tomatoes, and then he puts a metal grate, like a barbecue grill type grate. And then he puts chicken breasts on top of that, and then another grate, and then brownies on top of that, covers the whole thing with a dome, plugs it in, turns it on. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is absolutely brilliant. I want to do the same thing, but I don't have one of those countertop appliances, and I don't have any of those metal grates, and I don't really care about the brownies. So I went over to my oven, and we had just received a cast iron Dutch oven as a wedding gift. And I figured, well, that's probably really hot, that countertop appliance. So I turned my oven up to 450 degrees. You can tell if you're any kind of a cook, you know what a newbie move that one is. But I put some fish fillets and some vegetables and some herbs into this little cast iron Dutch oven, put the lid on it and put it in the oven. And in about half an hour, it just started to smell like dinner. And that just became the way that we cooked until my college roommate came to stay. And at the end of the week, she asked me to teach her how to cook like I cook. And I said, well, you've seen me do it. I just throw things into the cast iron Dutch oven and throw it in the oven. And she said, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. So I thought, okay, well, maybe she has a point. And I sat down and I wrote out a manuscript for a cookbook. This is my cookbook, Glorious One Pot Meals. And I ended up self-publishing it in 2005, and then I sold it to Random House in 2009, and this is the Random House edition. It's now sold more than 60,000 copies, and it's having a resurgence right now because it is perfect for pandemic quarantine cooking, because it allows you to cook directly from your freezer or pantry, whole foods, healthy meals, and less inflammation than all the stuff that we're getting from delivery and takeout, which is also very expensive. So Glorious One Pot Meals is this, and I even got a patent on this process. So for a long time, I toured the country, and I really believed that the answer to being healthy was whole foods are better than processed foods, which I still very much believe. But then my oldest child was born, and he was kind of sickly from the beginning. He had terrible constipation. He would go 12 days sometimes between bowel movements. He had terrible acid reflux. He would vomit, something like 20 times a week. And finally, when he was 6 years old, I took him to a naturopath. We had taken him to pediatric GI clinics and had his DNA mapped and done abdominal x-rays and all this stuff, and nobody had been able to help us. So we took him to this naturopath, and she said, I really think maybe this is food sensitivities. And I was like, but he doesn't get hives or anaphylaxis. And she said, well, those are food allergies, but food sensitivities cause inflammation in the body. And she recommended this test called the MRT. And when we did it, it was amazing. He was reactive to 1/3 of the items on the test. But at this point, he had fallen off the height and weight charts. And when we changed his diet, within 2 months, he had grown 2.5 inches and gained 15 pounds. He stopped throwing up all the time. He started sleeping through the night for the first time at 6.5 years old. There was just a tremendous, tremendous radical change in our world. And when I got my degree as a naturopath, I really decided that that's what I wanted to focus on.
Sorry, I just had to plug in my computer. I got the message that it was gonna die.
I'm like, did I lose you?
Like, did I lose you? I'm sorry, all of you out there, but some of those things happen sometimes. And we just have to make sure we take care of them, right?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Wow. So you had a frightening experience yourself in terms of finding out, what happened to you, and then you see your son struggling as well. So that's
yes. So while I was studying to become certified in this food sensitivity testing through Oxford Biotechnologies, it's the only laboratory in the country that offers this. And it's called the MRT test. And then you can become a certified LEAP therapist, which means that you're certified to interpret the results of the MRT test and administer the dietary therapy following up from that. So while I was studying to get that certification, I learned a lot about hypersensitivity reactions, and I was able to see a direct connection between hypersensitivity reactions from foods and multiple sclerosis. And so it really led me to developing a whole theory of autoimmunity that I now employ in my clinic with all my autoimmune patients.
Wow, that's so fascinating. It's just interesting the way we come about what we do in life and what our passion is. And a lot of times people that are in the healing industry, it comes from our own experience.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So with this focus on this food sensitivities, I know that, inflammation is a huge factor. And so how does somebody know if they're having inflammation or if that's the root cause of what their problem is?
That's such a good question. In fact, inflammation is really at the root of most, if not all, symptoms. So if you can think of symptoms that you might have, so we call inflammation in the head, we might call it a headache or a migraine. Inflammation in the sinuses, we might call sinusitis or chronic sinus infections or stuffiness or runny noses. Inflammation in the chest, we might call asthma. We might call it COPD. Inflammation in the gut, we might call IB, irritable bowel syndrome, or it might just be called constipation or diarrhea. It might be bloating or acid reflux. Inflammation in the joints, we call arthritis. Inflammation in the muscles, we call fibromyalgia. So really, if you can look down at the root cause of what your symptoms are, it's most likely going to be inflammation. So if there's inflammation in your body and you take steps to actively remove that inflammation, you're going to start to feel better.
And how long typically, if somebody really targets through diet or whatever, like you would suggest, how long does it typically take somebody to resolve inflammation?
So my basic foundational package is 4 months, and we work very extensively individually one-on-one for about 4 months, along with these very state-of-the-art sophisticated testing that really helps show me exactly what's going on in that person's body. But within the first month, there is radical improvement. And really, even within the first week or two of starting a dietary change, most people experience some improvement and difference already. And then, but it continues. So there's a rule of thumb in the world of natural health that says for every ailment, it takes a minimum of 2 months for healing to happen. And to those 2 months, you add another month for every year that you've suffered. So I like to give that little rule of thumb. So if you've been suffering with something for 10 years, you're going to look really at a year-long health journey of reclaiming your health. But what you can take heart in is that you're going to start to feel radically different, really radically better within the first 4 to 6 weeks. Absolutely. And then you're just going to continue to feel better and better and better throughout that year-long journey.
And so tell me a little bit more about your journey with your MS. So you changed your diet and you started feeling better. Did that basically stop all the symptoms, or did it just manage it?
So I don't, autoimmunity, I never say can be cured. There's no cure. Once you're a hypersensitive person, you're probably always going to be a hypersensitive person. But the secret is to manage it and to stop that downhill slide. So if you can stop having symptoms and symptoms and symptoms and getting more and more disabled and debilitated, that's a good thing. Let's just stop you here before you get all the way down here where you're already in a wheelchair or what have you. And then I teach you how to maintain that. So how can you identify when you are reactive to something, and then how, most importantly, can you recover afterward? Because as in the world with MS and other autoimmune issues, which are all about chronic inflammation, it's the scariest part is that when something happens, you don't know how long it's going to stick around. Mm-hmm. And often that can be a couple months, and then that's very scary and depressing, and all sorts of bad effects can happen because when you have chronic inflammation, it damages the tissues in your body.
Yes, yes. So what are some names of some other autoimmune diseases, just so some of our listeners that may not understand all the different things that might, some of the common ones you get that might be involved in autoimmune issues?
Absolutely. So lupus is a big one. There's something called NMO, which is kind of related to MS. A lot of people get misdiagnosed with that. That's an autoimmune. Sjögren's is another one. Thyroid, Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, Crohn's, IBS is autoimmune. How many more can I just pull off the top of my head here?
Rheumatoid arthritis.
Rheumatoid arthritis. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Usually, you said it takes usually about 4 months for people to really start to lower that inflammation. How do you measure that? Is there like a test that you do, or is it just how they feel?
So I think I misspoke. It doesn't take 4 months for that to happen. It takes 4 months to really set you on that path. It's going to happen long before that, but we want to get you to a point where your normal state is a good state and has been for a while, so that you're stable. I think that's the word I was looking for. So the second part of the question that you asked me was, remind me?
Is there a test that...
Oh, do I retest at the end of that?
Well, yeah, and what test you do to actually, from a more traditional testing standpoint, do you have tests that tell what the levels of inflammation are?
So I don't really. I work a lot. I do use the testing in the beginning of, it's a blood test and a urine test, and that gives me a very holistic view of the body. And then I don't necessarily need to retest. In fact, my goal is to send my patients out into the world where they don't need to go see doctors, where really they know how to manage their symptoms so that they're living a healthy and happy life without being bothered by all of the pain and discomfort of their symptoms, because they have been able to correlate the symptoms to the trigger. And that's exactly what I do. It's a lot of detective work, and I teach you how to do that. So at the end of the time that we work together, whether that's 4 months or a year, we make an assessment. What is left? Do you have any symptoms left? And if so, how do we want to address those? Is more testing warranted? Usually not, because usually, and this is really how the human body was designed to function, is that if we can remove the inflammation, we can allow the body to heal itself, and a lot of things right themselves. And in fact, people find they need less insulin, they need less or fewer blood pressure medications. A lot of their medications they start being able to discontinue because their body starts to be able to function on its own again.
And is it true? I mean, I've heard it from different people that the medications actually provide or increase the inflammation in the body.
So pharmaceuticals are toxic by their very nature, and we evolved on this planet to eat and function with the foods that grow on this planet, and pharmaceuticals don't fall into that category. They are created in a laboratory. So there is always some risk of irritation whenever you introduce new chemicals into a human body. Do all pharmaceuticals create inflammation? I don't know. Their job is to suppress the immune system. I guess it would depend on what the pharmaceuticals are, but really to mask whatever the symptoms are that you're trying to address. And my goal is to find what's happening, what's causing those symptoms in the first place, and let's get rid of that. And then you won't have the symptoms and you won't have to take the drug.
Right. I imagine your patients have a lot of savings in terms of, as they get better, they're not having to do the tests, they're not having to take the medications. And it may even affect their ability to work, right? If they've been very severely ill and they can't work, and then all of a sudden they're feeling better and they can actually be productive. I would think that would be a big motivator.
It is. It's true. In fact, I can think of so many of my patients. I remember one young man, he was about 21 and he was in a wheelchair. His MS hit really fast, or NMO maybe he had, and it hit him hard and fast and put him in a wheelchair. And he was so depressed when he came to me. His mother really forced him to start working with me. And by the time we completed our therapies, 4 months later, he was out playing wheelchair basketball. And he was back enrolled in community college and just really reclaiming his life. I have another patient. She was a young professional, about 28. She was an attorney, and she had been plagued by debilitating migraines almost every day of her life since she was 13. So she really thought they were hormone related. And when we did the testing and we changed her diet appropriately, she found that the migraines stopped, like for good. And what she was able to correlate by the time we finished our therapies was that a big trigger for her were things that were based in corn. And she used to have a Snickers every day around 3 o'clock when she would feel her energy flagging, and that's high fructose corn syrup. And so as soon as she changed her diet, and it was very funny because her friends were super supportive and they would make potluck dinners, but they would only make foods that she could eat. But within the 6 months after we finished working together, she got a huge promotion at work. She went on a cruise. She fell in love and met the man of her dreams and got engaged. I mean, like, everything started happening in her life where she had been stuck because of all this inflammation that was causing the migraines.
Yeah, it really is amazing how health can really suppress your ability to live and to be, enjoy life. And it kind of, sometimes it can creep up on you. I see a lot of times in my world and in therapeutic world that people's pain, it just kind of layers on, and they kind of get, it's like the analogy of the frog boiling in the pot. It doesn't jump out because it gets used to it and used to it. And then they just realize all of a sudden they don't have a life and they're unhappy.
Exactly. And in
Yep.
fact, most people will underrate their pain when you ask them, because, we're stiff upper lip and we're not supposed to complain about it's not so bad. I'm used to it. I can get through it. You don't even realize how much you're suffering until it stops.
Right. Right.
So, and I tell people that this is really, really hard to do by yourself, because if you're walking around 70 or 80 or 90% inflamed all the time and just feeling really crappy in your body, and then you eat something, then that pushes you up to maybe 85% inflamed, you're not even probably going to notice because you're already so inflamed. But if you go through this therapy and these protocols and we get you down to maybe 10% inflammation, and then you eat something and it brings you up to 90% inflammation, wow, you notice it. It is unmistakable.
Phenomenal. That's just really great. Well, do you have 3 or 4 tips you can give our audience, just so that they can kind of go out and try some things that might help them with their inflammation if they suspect they have inflammation?
Yes, one of my top tips is to start reading the labels and stop eating foods that have ingredients that you can't pronounce. Our chemical industry, I ran into a chemist a couple years ago, a food chemist, and he told me that he was taught that any chemical with fewer than 20 letters in it in the name was safe for human consumption. Right. This is who's like evaluating what's safe for me to eat. So avoid artificial sweeteners, avoid artificial colors and flavors. Those are made from petroleum. Avoid artificial fragrances. Throw out all of your dryer sheets, for God's sakes. Those things are toxic and evil. And then, look at your household cleaning products, especially now we're all stuck at home, and try to avoid the ones that are full of fragrances. All of the fragrances pretty much in all the manufactured products in our world are all created at one of 6 or 7 huge chemical companies that are scattered around the globe. And that means the fragrance that's put in Pine Sol, and the fragrance that's put in a strawberry milkshake from McDonald's, and the fragrance that's in your perfume, and the fragrance that's in your 409 that you're using, and in your laundry detergent, and in your toothpaste. It's everywhere. So those things are all just man-made chemicals, and anywhere you can avoid man-made chemicals, you'll benefit from.
And what, Elizabeth, are your top that you find are top foods that cause people inflammation in general?
If I had the answer to that, I would write a book and make $1 million. But what I find in the food sensitivity testing that I do is that it is really unique to every single person, that each gut is like a snowflake. And even amongst the MS community, there are no commonalities. I can't say that every MS patient should go wheat-free or dairy-free. Not at all. In fact, I find just the opposite in many people that I test. I've even tested twins, and their sensitivity profile was radically opposite each other. So universality, what I feel really comfortable saying is just avoid the chemicals and the fake foods and all of the additives and preservatives that you can, and you'll already start to feel better.
That's actually really interesting and helpful, because there's so much information out there about avoiding gluten and avoiding corn and avoiding. I'll ask you, but I am cautious about trying to make sure if I do eat corn, it's organic, and soy, it's organic, and wheat, it's organic, because in the reading I've done, and that those can be GMO and our body doesn't recognize the GMO.
You're absolutely right.
That.
Yep. And in fact, I talked about that in my 2014 TED Talk. And it was so controversial at that time that my TED Talk was banned, and I had to lobby to get it posted. And then finally they said, okay, we'll post it, but we're going to put a banner up on it that says that TED does not support these views. And I was like, fine, because I know that GMOs are not good for you, and I'm not going to recant what I said, but just please post it. But yes, absolutely. Watch out for the frankenfoods, and new ones are coming out all the time. They release the Arctic apples, the farmed salmon. Yes, our food supply is contaminated, and it is sad, and nobody is out there protecting us. So you have to protect yourself.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's always a big question I get. And it's good to know that I'm giving people good advice.
Absolutely. Even though you won't find it on mainstream media. In fact, you might find just the opposite.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. We have to be very careful what we take in mainstream media these days. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this show, is so that people can be educated about the truth and decide for themselves.
I agree. The other thing I get really pilloried in the mainstream media about is parasites. And I really believe that hidden parasitic infection is at the root of so much chronic inflammation in people. And in fact, the CDC says that 7 out of 10 adults probably have parasites, but yet most doctors never even think about it. And it's not anywhere near the top of mind where it should be in our world.
Well, I imagine that's a whole nother topic for another day, right?
It's true.
That's kind of scary and kind of icky thinking about.
It's a heebie-jeebie topic for sure.
Parasites, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I with my dog, I try and make sure she doesn't have parasites. So I kind of know a little bit about that. But thank you for those tips. I know that will help our listeners a lot. And I encourage you all to really look at what Elizabeth Yarnell has on her website. Just a great information, and she's just a great resource. So thank you for that. And I understand that you have a wonderful free gift for our listeners. So this is like a really cool thing. I'm so excited about it because she's so generous in offering this all to you all. So I encourage you to really take advantage of it. Yeah, so you tell us about that.
This is my inflammation Kickstart course. This is 7 days to kickstart your way to being less inflamed in your world and start to feeling better. And you can get that at bit.ly/EY for Elizabeth Yarnell Kickstart. EY Kickstart.
Great. And all that link will be below the video here, and with all of her information, so you can check out her cookbook. She's got another book as well, and all the great information she has. So just look below the video, and you'll see all that information. And also, I would just encourage you all to continue to follow the summit and all the different speakers that I have lined up for you. I'm just blown away by the amount of information and just wisdom that we're going to have, and we're going to share with all these great practitioners and influencers and authors. And I mean, just amazing people. So Elizabeth, I'm so grateful that you joined us today. And I really, really appreciate your generosity with our audience and all that you're giving to us. So I wish you the best of health, that you continue to be healthy and serve other people in your practice.
Well, thank you, Betsy. It was an honor to be on with you, and I wish you all the best of health, especially in today's scary world out there. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.